just because they sound nice usually, and they're more collectible, I guess. Kind of makes it a little more fun. There's usually larger artwork and liner notes. There's nice liner notes on records usually, especially older material. That just gives you a little bit of context when you're playing them, and you can kind of read them when you're listening to the music. It's nice to have that context because it kind of affects the way you listen. Like a big part of the shop is we don't really discriminate against people that prefer digital format or buy digital music. I mean, we all do. It's just part of, I guess, the exploration of music. So we really encourage any format, really. I mean, it's true that our store, we specialize in vinyl, but we don't discourage people from considering other formats or anything like that. And we certainly don't have any problem with it, because we all listen to music from CDs, from downloads, from records, So it's all part of the journey, I guess, the adventure of music. So we're encouraging of it. Vinyl is just one of those formats that I guess it appeals to people that are into really nice sounding music. So by virtue of its physical properties, I mean, every format has its drawbacks, for sure. But I think it's because of the way it sounds and all those other reasons that we talked about. The collectability, the context. It's pretty hard to. Well, it's a lot more work to escape hearing at least one side of a record. So it forces you to have at least that 20-minute experience if it's an LP. To listen to it all the way through, or halfway through rather, and with 45s, they sound really great, so they're more fun to DJ usually than playing MP3s off a laptop. They sound better, and it's more enjoyable. And there's stuff that you can't really find easily on a digital version too. That these little rare arcane artifacts, these nuggets, that especially DJs and people that are into DJ culture, they have these kind of prized gems that they have in their crate that they can pull out, and or for listening parties and stuff like that. It's really enjoyable to show people some cool obscure track that's appealing to that group of people, stuff like that. And the physical tangibleness of it is really, there's something about that tactile experience. Typically independent record stores, and I would put in that caveat to separate us from more of the big box stores that also, like big electronics stores that sell video game consoles and TVs and stuff, and they happen to also carry music. Typically the staff is more into records. So with independent record stores, you get there's a lot of depth of knowledge and places where you can go that you normally wouldn't go, as far as having a relationship with some of these people that work at the shops. It's kind of, a lot of our staff have this kind of trusted advisor type of status with some customers, where, because we're always listening to music, we're always exploring, cool albums, both going back in time as well as staying up to date with new stuff. So, because it's our job, and all of our staff here are either musicians or involved in music production, or there's always many facets of active musical involvement in the community for every staff member here. So I don't know, we're all excited about music, and we're always listening to music, we're always looking for music, So it's a nice experience when you walk into a shop. you're getting into soul music and you're finished with the Marvin Gaye and Aretha Franklin catalog, and you kind of want to go a little further, but you don't know where to go. And you can name some songs or some albums that you liked, and maybe someone can show you something that's kind of really narrowing down to that area, you know, and distill it like further down to that component of like, oh, you really like, you know, Memphis soul. Okay, so now that we've gotten there, because you're responding well to these songs or these tracks that I've shown you, let's find you a beautiful Memphis soul album. Getting that experience is I think a big part of it. And also, there's a curation aspect to the shops themselves. So every shop has different staff with different knowledge, that they'll choose certain niche pockets and specializations in certain areas that they'll focus on, because they'll know, I don't know, maybe one staff member knows really cool early 80s, you know, indie rock type stuff, you know, or more specifically Canadian 80s indie rock, right? That is a precursor to, you know, the 90s indie rock of Pavement and stuff like that. And then you have a strong selection in that realm, and staff that's knowledgeable in that area, and they'll either pick the cool titles to buy, or when you're hunting for vintage collections, they'll know the good titles to get to keep the store full of interesting titles. So you get that effort that comes from local shops that you really don't get from, like, I'm just going to say large big box shops, because the way they buy is different, the way they curate is different. A lot of it's statistical, and a lot of it's based on availability of new product too. So we also carry vintage. So there's most, you know, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of record stores do vintage as well as new, for both CD as well as vinyl. So even if something's not in print, we know the stuff that's out of print that's still desirable, that's still important for people to get or dig, to get, you know, to have available. You know, let's say so and so is really into jazz, and then they started off with 40s bebop jazz, but then they've kind of moved out of that realm, and now they're more listening to, you know, 60s, I don't know, gospel, spiritual jazz, you know, free jazz, and that other stuff in their collection they're not that into anymore. So they can bring it to their local shop and get store credit, and then turn that into pieces of music that they're into now, that they'll actually consume and continue their quest for sound or whatever, right? And you get that, which is great, because then some other person that's getting into that realm has this, you know, stuff that's available now. So there's this great bebop stuff that they're just getting into that someone else, you know, already consumed, and they know it, you know. So there's that aspect of it. It could be as simple as like Simon and Garfunkel. This morning I gave my girlfriend all my Simon and Garfunkel records, right? Because I know those songs inside out. I've listened to them a million times, right? And I asked myself, when was the last time I actually pulled it out of the shelf to play Simon and Garfunkel album? The answer is I don't remember. Many years ago. So I have two choices: to bring it to the store, put it out so someone else could enjoy it, or I know my girlfriend happens to really like Simon and Garfunkel, so I said, you know, you want these records? And she's like, oh, do I ever? You know, I love this stuff. And I'm like, great, enjoy them, listen to them, use them. That's what they were made for. First of all, definitely get your music out if you can't afford to make vinyl, because it's expensive, or don't have the time, inclination, or energy to make some cool cassettes. And if it's something that's, you know, really budget, home recording, or friends, you know, kind of makeshift studio, because I don't know, technology has made producing your own music quite accessible now. You know, it's really, you can make something half decent for really, really cheap. So I mean, all you need is a laptop, a mic, and maybe not even a mic sometimes, right? Basically all you need is at least a laptop or a computer. Not even a laptop, actually. You just need a computer. So, and then it goes further on from there, and everything else is so cheap now too, right? Apart from, you know, when you get to the major league stuff, it's still expensive to get beautiful tube microphones and to record through, you know, beautiful analog mixing boards. But That's a small percentile, and you can still get your music out without hitting that world really cheap. So I'd say just get it out. And we don't, our store doesn't carry CDs, so we encourage people to make mixtapes or to make a tape with their EP or their album or their single, because cassettes are really affordable, and you can be really creative with the packaging. You know, you can do it yourself. People do Velcro. People do really nice craft paper with holes punched out, and they tie string through it to package their cassettes. So you can make really beautiful little artifacts, you know, and that obviously have time and care that are put into it to showcase your stuff. And it's still a fun way to share it. I mean, usually those cassettes come with a free download or a URL to the SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever the artist puts it out on. But I'd say, yeah, being productive is key, because how are people gonna know what you sound like to think about going to your show if they can't hear your music? We don't turn down any independent artists. We can sign anything that someone's made, because we think it's really important that their material is accessible in a shop. Yeah, we don't turn down any independently made material ever, as long as it's, you know, vinyl or cassette format. Yeah, we don't curate independent releases in that sense, because we feel that if somebody's put the time and energy and care and passion into making something, the least we can offer is to respect them for that and help them out where we can. Well, I mean, I've been fortunate to be around since the first record store day, and it's before we opened the shop, and I was co-managing another store. And the first year, we really didn't know what to think about it. So we go, okay, there's a bunch of new releases. Let's order some of this stuff. There's still new records that we want to bring in. And since then, it's blown up to be quite this thing. And I think it's good. I think it's good for independent record stores, because it's just like a reminder and an excuse for people to go out and celebrate buying records, I guess, you know. And of course, I think that's a good thing. By the same rationale, I think it's also slightly, if not, well, I guess I'm being a bit diplomatic about it, I think it's to a degree blown a bit out of proportion, because it's become a bit of a cash grab for especially larger labels. They're releasing stuff that isn't, you know, that interesting, or it's going to be available apart from record store day. It's just that's the day they're releasing the title, and it happens to be the release date. So it creates this illusion of, you know, how long this thing will exist, which creates what would I call it, a false sense of urgency to buy this product, which I think that's kind of silly. They're also coming out with things that they're really shooting in the dark, a lot of people, for stuff that they think will be popular, that you can kind of tell that some of these, and specifically major labels, like really, I'm talking about the giant ones, not just major labels, but like really big labels, okay? You can kind of tell that they're a bit out of touch with some of the stuff that they're trying to put out, and they're pushing too hard to make money out of it, which is, it's fine by us. We just don't order those records, you know. But it becomes overwhelming for us too, because there's so much dilution in what's available. I think it's the growth rate of available titles for a specific record store day, either releases or limited editions or record store exclusives, that kind of stuff. It's been growing exponentially, so it's a bit overwhelming for us to go through everything. Another downside of it is it's tough, because people with the internet, they can see what's available maybe in the UK, maybe exclusively in certain geographies of the US even, or anywhere else around the world. I'm focusing on those areas because they put out a lot of records, but they're not always available to us in Canada, even though we do import as much as we can from the UK and the US. But for record store day specifically, we can't always get that stuff. and certainly not on the day of release. There's limitations there, so it becomes a bit tough for us if someone's asking for something that's not readily available. But I think overall I think it's great. It's exciting, and it's like a second Christmas for record store owners, you know, because you all of a sudden have this huge spike April 20th this year that you normally wouldn't get, and it helps out a lot because we don't really make a lot of money. We just try to make we try to put everything back in, especially since we're new. But the record store business is not. It doesn't really make millionaires, especially if you're not branching out into chains and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's good. It's a good thing. We're gonna have some bands while we have this back space that's a modular performance space as well as a work area. For as long as we have this, which there are already some tentative plans of expanding the store and using up the space. So, but for this record store, this space will still be here. And yeah, we're having bands all day playing. There's a label called Death Waltz. They've been putting out some interesting, well, the most popular stuff they've been putting out is John Carpenter's soundtrack compositions. But they have some titles that I find personally exciting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's people that are emailing us every day about the Fish records that are coming out and stuff like that. So there's a lot of exciting titles, but personally, I'm excited about the Death Waltz stuff. There's a Stephen Malcolmist record that's coming out. It's a live recording of him and a band that he's put together performing Cannes Ege Benassi. It's a krautrock record that's pretty popular. And, excuse me, yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I'm kind of excited to hear that. There's a few things here and there, but there's so much stuff coming out. We can't buy everything, right? So we try to choose stuff that we think people want, and we really encourage them to contact us through social media, through email, from walking in, phone calls, just to tell us what they're interested in, because it gives us a bit of an indication on demand and interest. So try to be democratic about it as well.